How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason, and in today's video, we're going to be previewing Week 8 of the 2023 CFL season. Can't believe we're nearing the midway point already, but let's get into it. So one thing I'll say before we get started is that this may be one of the hardest weeks to predict in the CFL so far this season, with the exception of one game. All these games look very close on paper, so I'm really looking forward to this week's action. So first game, Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the 6-1 BC Lions visiting the 5-2 Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and this is the clash of the top two teams in the West Division. Could be huge for playoff implications this year. Of course, BC beat Winnipeg already this season, so if BC wins, they have the tiebreaker at season's end, and effectively would be like 3 games up on the Bombers if they win this game. The players that I'm watching in this one, not going to be too complicated for this. I'm picking both of the quarterbacks. For BC, Dane Evans is going to be starting once again in place of Vernon Adams. Looked very good last week, albeit against the Edmonton Elks, so let's see if he can replicate that performance against Winnipeg. It's worth noting that the last time that Dane played Winnipeg was last year with Hamilton, and he threw 5 touchdown passes in what was a career performance. And then for Winnipeg, I'm going with Zach Collaros, who had a down game the last time they played BC, was held to just 6 points overall as a team, Winnipeg was. So I think that Collaros has to have a big game for this team to be able to win against that BC defense. So I'm really looking forward to this game, perhaps the game of the year to this point of the season. And ultimately, in terms of who I'm going to pick for this game, super close. I think it's going to be a really, really close game that goes down to the wire. Unlike the last time these two teams played, I think Winnipeg's going to be really motivated coming out of that bye week, and I'm going to take Winnipeg to win 24-23. I'm just not ready to say that Winnipeg's time at the top of the West Division is over, so I'm going to take Winnipeg to win 24-23 and squeak out one here. Next up, Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, we have the 6-0 Toronto Argonauts visiting the 2-5 Calgary Stampeders, and this is a very lopsided game on paper, but it's worth noting that the last time these two teams played in Calgary, late last season, Calgary won 29-2, I believe it was. It was a very lopsided score, so I think it's worth noting that this could be a potential trap game for the Argos, and I think in terms of the players I'm watching this one, for Toronto, defensive end Folarin Oromalade, who's been an absolute beast ever since coming over as a free agent acquisition from Calgary. He'll be playing against his former team in this one, so I think he'll be motivated. And a lot of former Stampeders on that Toronto roster really helped build the core of that team in Toronto. And then for Calgary, I'm going with their entire offensive line. I think the offensive line, I mean, it's been good this year, generally speaking. I think it's still one of the best units in the league, but I think the last few weeks they have not been able to get the ground game going. A lot of pressure up the middle, really disrupting Jake Maier's drop back. So I think they're going to have to play better in this one against a very good Toronto front with Oromalade, Sean Oakman, all those guys coming on the blitz as well. So I think this is going to be a really interesting game. A lot of people are going to be hammering Toronto in this one because of obviously a 6-0 record to begin the year, but they're going to lose one of ththese weeks. No team has ever went 18-0 in the CFL. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think this is a potential trap game, like I said, for Toronto. And honestly, I'm not doing too well on my season picks so far. I think I'm like 17-10, or oh no, that was my record last week. I think it's 19-11 or something like that after last week. But I think I need to catch up in the standings. That means I'm going to have to take some risks here. And I think I'm going to pick an upset this week. I'm going to take Calgary to win 29-26, kind of like their last stand here. I think that if they fall to 2-6, I mean, it's looking really dicey for them going forward, even though they wouldn't be completely out of it in terms of the playoff picture. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this game plays out. But I'm going to take Calgary to pull an upset here against Toronto. Now moving on to Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, to the game that I will be attending this week. We have the 3-3 Montreal Alouettes visiting the 3-4 Hamilton Tiger Cats. And of course, this is a rematch from earlier this season where Montreal went into Hamilton during their home opener and really smacked them around. I think it was 38-12. So Hamilton's going to be looking for a big bounce back compared to that game earlier this season. And the players that I'm watching in this one, Fabian Ento, defensive back for the Alouettes, had a huge game last week, had the pick 6, but also had a couple of other disruptive plays against that Calgary Stampeders receiving core. Let's see if he can do the same this week against Hamilton. That Alouettes defense has been very good so far this season. I've been really impressed with them. Hamilton, I'm going with wide receiver slash kick returner Tyreek McAllister, who's been quiet the last couple of weeks, but I think he's due for a big play in this game, and I think that whether that comes in the kick return game or as a receiver or out of the backfield, I think he's going to be a big part of what Hamilton's going to want to do in this one. Needs to create some big plays, and, the last time, or one of the last home games that they had, he had their lone touchdown. I think that was the game against Ottawa. So I think that McAllister is a big part of the Ticats, ceiling so far this season. I think if he plays well, he gives them that big play element that they haven't really had otherwise this season. So I'm interested to see what he provides to the lineup in this one. In terms of who's going to win, I think it's going to be a much closer game than the last time these two teams played. Ultimately, the difference the last time was that Montreal, even though they won by like 24 points, the difference was that Hamilton just could not get into the end zone. They had 4 field goals in that one, no touchdowns, and Montreal got basically all touchdowns. So I think it's going to reverse a little bit in this one. I think it's going to be a much closer game. But ultimately, I'm going to take the Alouettes to still win 24-19. They've just been the much more consistent team this year compared to the Tiger Cats. So I just can't realistically take the Ticats to win this one. Playing with Taylor Powell, making his second career CFL start. Liked what I saw from him in his first career CFL start the other week against Toronto, but I think in this one, I just can't trust Hamilton over what we've seen from Montreal so far this season, so I'll take the Alouettes. Now moving on to the finale of this week, Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have the 3-4 Ottawa Redblacks visiting the 3-4 Saskatchewan Roughriders, and I think this is an interesting game because this could really swing the seasons in different directions for each of these teams. I think the players that I'm watching for in this one, both wide receivers. Wide receiver Jalen Acklin for the Ottawa Redblacks had a massive season last year, been very quiet to begin this year. I think he's been like their 3rd or 4th best receiver, honestly. I mean, other guys like Justin Hardy have really impressed me a lot more on that Ottawa Redblacks receiving core. So I'm waiting for Acklin to have a big game that he hasn't really had this season. And then for Saskatchewan, I'm going with the breakout player and wide receiver Tevin Jones, who is a big body receiver, had over 100 yards last week in the touchdown Atlantic game. So I want to see them really target him in the red zone when they get the opportunity because he has a big body. Just throw a jump ball up to him. I mean, nothing else is working in terms of getting Saskatchewan into the end zone. So I think that could be a way that they get that accomplished in this one. So ultimately, I think this is going to be a really close game. Tough to predict because of the quarterbacks involved. Dustin Crum has shown a lot in those first 3 weeks, but he had a little bit of a slip up last week, could not get his offense in the end zone against Hamilton. So it's going to be interesting to see how he rebounds from that one. And then I think for Saskatchewan, Mason Fine has really struggled in his first 2 starts of this season. So don't feel too confident one way or the other in terms of my pick for this week, but ultimately I think that Ottawa right now is the slightly more trustable team or trustworthy team. I always say trustable, but trustworthy team in this one. So I'm going to take Ottawa to win 17-13 in the Battle of the Rough Riders. But with that said, that is just your preview for week 9 of the 2023 CFL season. Be sure to let me know your picks down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.